countdown is kind of cool.
Mhm.
That thing, I was like, that's a
Cool.
pretty cool countdown. Aicila, ma'am, it has been a hot minute, but I got my
Mhm.
dinner plate. I got a cocktail too.
Ooh,
So I'm gonna let you
you're
start. I'm gonna let you
you've
start.
come prepared. I love this.
Yes.
It's the name of the game. So one of the things we talked about, hi everybody who's here today, and one of the things we talked about briefly a couple weeks ago when we were talking about doing the show was I had seen this thing go through the news that said female hurricanes are more deadly than male hurricanes. And so I thought, well, that's something we could talk about. We're talking about women's issues. And then when I was prepping for today, I went to look it up on my favorite fact-checking site, Snopes. So for those of you that aren't familiar, Snopes.com. It's a great place to go double check things. And they were like, well, it's not quite like that. The one, remember, they used to only name hurricanes after women, which is problematic. And two, when they did like control for the fact that they had only named hurricanes for women up until like 1979, before they started alternating back and forth, then they still are like, yeah, the data really isn't there. Like it's a fun fact to a fun fake fact. It's very fun and inflammatory. And I thought, well, this is great to lead in for our conversation, because one of the things that G and I have talked about is wanting to really explore how we can have civil discourse across differences. And for me, that also means being responsible for the things that we share. And, like hanging out with my friends, I can say something like that, whatever. However, once I'm stepping into a platform where I'm going to share it more broadly, to me, it feels like being responsible for my speech is double
Yes.
checking it, right?
Yes.
And I think that it's a good reminder that no matter how thoughtful or caring or how much attention we're paying, we can always accidentally, especially in this massive information age, pass on misinformation. And so I just, one, mea culpa, and two, I just think it's a great way to remember that it's easy both to be part of the problem and part of the solution.
Oh, and this is why I love having my chats with Aicila. So with that, let's invite you to the dinner table. You know what? I feel like I should go back and do some voiceover work and do like a real Las Vegas show thing. Like live now.
Live now.
G. Before we get started, let me get some hellos in here. Hey, my mama gonna show up.
She's
Mama gonna
best.
show up for her daughter, her kids. She gonna do it. Hello, Mrs. Houston. And we also have Chrissy's Corner here. Hello, ma'am. Good to have you here. And we are excited. Aicila and I are excited to bring to you not dinner conversations live, because normally we record this. Normally we record it. And just to give a little background real quick before we get into our topics, we have a lot. There's a lot going on. A lot.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say, Aicila, I mean, we have had some conversations, and what is so brilliant is when you said, hey, we should get together and talk about some stuff that should be talked about, that people are afraid to talk about. And as we were deciding what the name should be, you mentioned to say, yeah, you wouldn't do it over dinner. It's like, this is not dinner conversations, because we
Not
talk
dinner.
about stuff.
Yep.
We get into it. And with that, because I have a strong cocktail today, I have some whiskey on me.
Nice.
That's what I'm doing. I did add some ice so I can still manage this conversation. But can we talk about 45's Aurora, Colorado rally? Ma'am.
So, yeah, specifically, and I have the clip from Kyle Clark that I can play if you want to
Yeah.
see a little bit about the thing that was concerning was let's see, I can technically play it. We'll find out if I can actually play it. But he talked about in this rally about how the real problems in our country For some reason, it's not letting me share my screen. I apologize, everybody. So I'll pop a link in for you to look at it if you want to. But in the Aurora rally, Kyle Clark from 9 News was like, he said something that I didn't catch right away. And then he reset it on Fox News, which is that the real enemy is the enemy within. It's you and me. It's the people that are not on board with the agenda. And he said he wanted to use the U.S. military against those people. And that to me is concerning.
Beyond concerning. My immediate thought, and we talked about the Alien Enemies Act, right? We talked about that, where you can do detention and deportation of U.S. citizens and what have you, right? And I immediately thought of that movie with Denzel Washington and Annette Bening called The Siege. It's way back. It's like a 1990s movie. It's way back. But there was a terrorist threat. There was a bomb or something, and so they started rounding up any young man who looked to be of Arabic descent, and they put them in this sort of concentration camp, right? And one of the guys, he was a cop, and his son got rounded up, right? And it was just, people think it can't happen here, but think about it. This act, this act tells us it has happened here before.
Well,
it's happened here before. Hello.
I used to live in Tacoma, Washington, where they rounded up all their Korean people and took them from their homes and put them in concentration camps because of the war. Like, we have had plenty of, without even that part, we've had plenty of concentration. They were citizens, they owned property, they were tax-paying, voting members of society. And somebody decided, yeah, no. And so that, and you're right. Like, we live in this idea that if we don't do anything wrong somehow, and to be fair, I don't think this is something you believe. But there's this general perception that, if you just try not to do anything wrong, you won't be harmed. But the challenge is kind of people decide what's wrong based on who's in charge, I guess.
Definitely who's in charge. If we look into the deeper part of it, it's a wartime authority that allows the president to detain or deport the natives and citizens of an enemy nation. And the law permits the president to target these immigrants without a hearing and based only on their country of birth or citizenship. So the law was enacted to prevent foreign espionage and sabotage in wartime. It can be and has been wielded against immigrants who have done nothing wrong.
Yep.
Now, in my head, I have to think that when people hear this and they're like, that's no big deal, I got to think a part of you believes that I'm not part of that group. Like,
yeah,
me, because, like, I'm not. He's not talking about me, is he? He's talking about you, fool. He's talking about you. Because they're not asking you where you came from. I mean, think about it. Now, I'm here in Texas, and even when I was in New York, people assume things. They assume that you are of a certain ethnicity or race based on your skin tone, right? And people here will often call anyone of Latin descent Mexican. Yeah, I'm not Mexican, right? I'm from Guatemala. I'm from Ecuador. Like, you have all these places. They're like, what's the same? It's all the same.
Well, and a lot of people that are Latino didn't emigrate, right? Like, we changed the border. We bought part of another country. So I have a friend who is mixed. She is indigenous, Latina, and Black. She's like, none of my people ever emigrated. Like, and yet she's constantly asked, where are you from?
Yes.
And so that's the racial component of it, is that I think it's easier for white people, because they don't get asked that, to really assume, like, that'll never apply to me. And so I think they're the easiest to take in, the more gullible to these tactics, in my opinion. And therefore, and also have, positionally the most of influence to prevent the problem. And that to me is another thing that I feel like, we've been shouting this from the rooftops for a while, like racism doesn't help anyone, but,
No.
but gosh darn it, getting my white family to chime in is tricky.
You know what? Let me say this, because I had this chat with my friend Ron.
And I mean family in the
This
larger sense. I don't just mean the people I'm blood related to, just to be clear.
the friend, I know. I had this chat this morning, and we had it afterwards. But in order for people to get to a place of acknowledging what really happens in America every day, you're asking folks to give up what they know about themselves, to give up lies. Now, think about Santa Claus. Now, my mama never gave us the Santa Claus story. Like it never
Yeah.
existed. It never existed in our household. And also, too, me as a kid, I didn't get it because I was like, but there's no chimneys in the apartment. So how's he get in? Like it didn't
Mhm.
make sense to me. Like the common sense, it wasn't vibing.
Mhm.
But when people get to an age of what, there's no Santa Claus? What? All those years? Yeah, you're asking grown people to look at themselves and say, I'm now going to recognize the fact that I have privilege because of my eye color, my hair color, my skin color.
Yeah.
And because of that, some of the things that come to me are based on just that and nothing else.
Mhm.
Nothing else. Nothing else. Now, I don't know how many people can go there because we have a hard enough time with people just acknowledging that they're wrong. As you mentioned, when you give out bad info,
Mhm.
right? The number of folks who would actually come back and correct themselves and say, oops, sorry. Now, you do see it in articles written saying, oops, we mistakenly said so and so, but it's this, yada, yada, yada. But we don't see that because
Mhm.
the whole idea of ever acknowledging your mistake is just, you just don't do it,
No. Mm-mm.
right? So we keep putting out these lies and whatever. And I do feel some kind of way about misinformation. I do. Because I
Mhm.
don't I don't see it as, can you misspeak? Yeah. You may get like a detail somewhat kind of wrong, but when you purposely put out information that is not correct, that's not misinformation. That's called a lie last time I checked. But that's just me.
Mhm.
I could be wrong. I
No,
could be.
no, I think that that's the thing though, is like someone puts out the lie, right? Or they're sloppy, one of the two, right? Like they're either malicious or they're sloppy, and then someone else takes it. And if we don't have a habit of double checking it, then we can be part of disseminating that
Mhm,
information.
mhm.
And it's tricky because on the one hand, I feel like, yeah, we need to be responsible. Like when we talk about free speech all the time, what about responsible speech? What about actually being like aware of your impact and your in some form of influence? Like there are things I wouldn't say when I was a parent to my kids because I knew they would take it very
Mhm.
seriously.
Mhm.
And I had a responsibility to speak in a way. And was I 100%? No, of course not. I was a human being. However, my effort and my intention was towards that goal, right? And
Yes.
and that's the same thing. Like I have to say, and I don't know if we're going to be super partisan here. Obviously, we both have progressive leaning views, but one of the things that I've noticed about candidate Harris, Vice President Harris, is that she is incredibly careful about how she says things. And
Yes.
I feel like that's, the being a prosecutor and being aware that like her words could send someone to prison.
Yeah.
And it's important that people have that awareness. Yeah, you're going to vent to your friends and you'll say things that are like private and personal, but you wouldn't vent to your friends the same way you vent to your coworker, the same way you vent to your boss, because it's
Yeah.
inappropriate. And yet for some reason, like free speech. And I'm like, really? Really? You can't be that naive.
There's a filter there.
There's a guest filter.
There's a filter. Let me do this. Let me go back. Because I wanna
Yeah,
make sure, because
this
we
is
talked
important.
about it, and this is one of those things where I just feel as if there is a miss when and I'm gonna say 45, when he puts stuff out there, we act as if it's just something he says, and we have gotten to a place of just letting things go. But talking about using the Alien Enemies Act and discussing using the military against US citizens, that I don't believe is something that should be taken lightly, right? Because it
No.
talks about like how a president can use it, but it also mentions, and this is from the Brennan Center for justice, right? This is where that's from. And they're looking at it to say, hey, it's only been invoked in major conflicts and what have you, but presidents can use it when they see fit. And you have nothing to protect you from it. That's the scary part. Now, I will say that there are people working against it. You got Representative Omar and Senator, I guess it's Hirano. I guess I should get her name right. They are looking to repeal it by putting in or introducing the Neighbors Not Enemies Act, because the fear was some president might come along and take advantage of it, abuse the power. What? Could that ever happen? I just don't see it happening. Like, are you serious right now? Like,
However,
really?
could we have
Could it?
predicted this? No,
Like,
like,
could that ever happen? Yeah.
well, that
And
speaks to
if
something.
if I may, real quick, and I'm gonna let you take it. I find it's disturbing, but it's also telling that you have a party that is going deep, deep in the library to find practices, laws, policies, to do things that any normal person would say, this is awful. Like 1798. Oh my God. Yeah.
It's been a minute.
It's been a minute.
But let's go back to 1798. I'll tell you what, I don't want to do that. But you're right. They're really reaching for those old methods. And we see it, right? We see it happening. I was just going to say, like, it speaks to something we talked about in one of our earlier shows, which is that we get really fixated on the presidency and the executive branch. And let's be clear. I have a link. This woman, she made a post that I thought was really important. She said, you just have to remember your legislators, your representatives, and your senators are responsible for approving funding for war, trade, arms, treaties, and disaster funding agreements, among other things. They are responsible for things like the act that they could overturn it or change it. So as much as people are just, to a certain extent, I think, fixated and maybe a little distracted by the presidential race, I think we really have to get so much clearer about how to make sure our representatives, local and state and federal representatives, are more representative of our actual values. Because I agree with the people who are like, yeah, there are super big issues in how our country is running. It's not a Democrat Republican issue. We have a larger challenge, and opting out, as you talked about, people not voting, that doesn't actually help change anything. And even if all they do, I'll talk to you, if all you do is vote in your local and state elections and just try and look at your federal representatives, you can have so much more of an impact than who you pick for president, first of all, and definitely than by not participating. Is it enough? No. We need massive change at a widespread scale. It's not the answer. It's not the end all be all. And that is a way that we can hold back some of the worst of the things that we see coming down the pipeline that are incredibly concerning and most damaging to the most vulnerable among us. So opting out and leaving people to twist in the wind, to me, is not responsible.
That's perfect, because we want to talk about what's on the menu today. All right, let me say it real quick, because you just mentioned it, and I wrote it down here, and it's that the people who choose not to vote, and I actually have them in one big bucket. People who say that it's the same on both sides, people who choose not to vote, people who choose not to participate in anything, but yet and still have so much to say about what is and isn't happening where they are. Okay. So I was getting ready for it today. As you know, you and I, we tend to actually do like a little bit of research and get our stuff together. You know what I'm saying? And I couldn't help but see people who, this one guy said, had he not been married, he would not have voted for either party. And I was like, Okay, whatever. And then there was someone else who was saying that it is, again, it's the same on both sides. So I'm gonna go ahead and say it because this is where Gwendolyn lies. There is no way that you can look at a person or their campaign and it is promoting outright hate to like the infinite degree. It is hate. It is fear mongering of what's an other, what's not like you. It is the power over others. It is the scarcity mindset. You can't tell me that that is the same thing you see over here, where the crowd looks like what America really is, this hodgepodge of people from all over, all ages, ethnicities, race, gender, sexual orientation, like all of it. I don't know what pair of glasses this person is wearing for anyone to say that. And I often say it's a cop out when people go to, oh, it's the same on both sides. That's baloney, and you know it. And you know it. Now, what your reasons are for not acknowledging, in my opinion, I go back to, it takes a lot to recognize who you really are. To say,
Mm,
in my heart of hearts, I actually, my value system lines more on this side than it does on this side. So I would much rather sort of play the middle because that's safe. No, no, it's not. In my
mhm,
opinion, I feel like it tells me exactly who you are because you
mhm.
can't see these two campaigns and even believe they are of the same fabric of America. You can't tell me that.
The same fabric.
I
I
don't
love
see
it.
it.
Well, and I think so one of the things that I do understand in that conversation is the level of corporate meddling. So
Mm, mm,
there was what is it? I'm gonna say this wrong because I apologize, but there is a long it's they do a study after the fact, right? And they looked at something like 30 or 40 years of public opinion polls and 30 or 40 years of legislation. And there was almost no correlation between what people wanted
mm,
and what actually got passed as laws. When they controlled for wealth, it was a little bit there was a little bit more, like 15% overlap. It really wasn't a ton. And one of the things that I find interesting is that if you listen to people in who are identify as conservative, and you listen to people who identify as, or I should say, Republican and Democrat, because I think that's probably more what I'm talking about right now,
mhm,
they have a lot of the same complaints, right? They're like, I don't like the corporate meddling in my life.
mhm.
I don't feel like I can see a future. I don't, and then they blame different things. I think that's where the divergence occurs, right?
Yes.
However, to me, it feels like I agree. I understand where you're coming from, because the presentation of the Democratic Party, it's definitely when I watch the DNC, there's definitely a lot more of the kinds of people, the diversity of people that I would recognize in the world that I happen to inhabit. And that part about, there's that joke, or I don't know if it's a comedian that said it. It's like, I wish that we had our representatives and our presidents, all of our, the people that serve in the government had to wear like jackets like NASCAR drivers with all their sponsors on them.
Yeah.
And I feel like at least for me, when I hear they're the same, or I think they're the same, it's really about that like the large corporations kind of give to both sides, because they don't really care who wins. They just want to maintain their stranglehold on the American people. And to me, I feel like that is a huge part of the problem, is we're so interested in profitability, we've stopped caring about people in the planet. And the assumption, like, it used to be that we agreed as a community. When I was a kid, I felt like everybody was like, yeah, homelessness is bad, we have to take care of people, that's what a good society does. And now it's homeless people are bad, we have to punish them.
Mhm.
And I don't understand how that happened.
Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna talk through a thought
Mhm.
I had today as I was getting ready for this. So I shop at Kroger. I get the few rewards, so I shop at Kroger, right? And as I'm shopping in Kroger, they do this thing called a freshness check, where they ask the team members to go out and like check the freshness of various items and things, right? I think about that when it comes down to take away the parties. Because at this point, I'm an independent, but it's
Mhm.
your values that you're attracted to.
Yeah.
Really believe that there's too much corporate meddling and whatnot, lobbyists. Yeah, all of that's in there. So yes, on that part, they are the same. Call it, yep, done. We get that. What I can't get past is that I see a person who stands on stage, talks about people in the worst way possible.
Mhm.
Vermin, trash, call them all kinds of names. I mean, it is flat out disgusting. It is disgusting. I'm gonna say it ain't even close to being Christian if I want to get religious, which
Mhm.
clearly. Um, uh, there is no way that I can go to bed at night, say that I believe in the good Lord above, this is just me, right?
Mhm.
And wake up and say, that guy. Now I know he's a child of God because he done made all of us, right? But I don't think he sent him for that. You can't, I
Yeah.
mean, like, there's just, I just can't see it. So when people say, oh, well, I support him because of this, no, no. Lack of integrity and lack of character, that part I can't get past, right?
Mm.
Because I do know there are some, again, some fundamentals, the giving of money here and there. Yeah, that part's the same. That's a moot point. But when you tell me that what you stand for is taking away the rights of women, making them pretty much like property, and when that you stand for putting kids in cages, separating families, ain't no way in the world we doing the same thing. Like we are not in the same car. It's just
Mhm.
unless that is what you believe in. And this past week, there were former colleagues and associates who posted some messages. And I had to go back. I was like, Gwendolyn, how fair minded are you? I am fair minded to a point of, yes, you have every right to express yourself, this, that, and the other. Great. But now I know who you are because you are demonizing immigrants. You're
Mhm.
demonizing migrants. You're saying the most disgusting things about the Madam Vice President, not because she's a VP, but because she's a Black
Yeah.
woman. You're saying those things, and yet and still you would jump inside my face and want to have a conversation and act like we all friends and stuff. I see you for who you are.
Mhm.
Our values is what leads most of us to purchase how we purchase and go where we go. It's our values. And that guy does not represent my idea of what this experiment is. It is the worst idea. In fact, it's probably like the base of it, how we got here in the first place.
Mhm.
I need a drink, Aisla. Hold on. I
That's
need
fair.
a cocktail because I was feeling some kind of way. Hold on. I'm gonna let
Mhm.
you pick up.
No, I actually I appreciate you lining it out in that way because I feel that I will say coming from a conservative background, that was the thing that shocked me the most. I the type of conservative that I grew up with, was willing to stand up for the vulnerable to they really did the ones that I was closer to. And I also, I tend to see the best in people for however, the actions were there. They stood up for the vulnerable, they care, and they wouldn't allow that kind of behavior in their space. Like I'm very clear that they would never allow someone to behave the way 45 behaved in their sphere, right? And
Mm,
so to see the conservative population get on board with the vitriol and the dehumanization of people, that was really shocking to me. I still held some of those like feelings of respect because that just wasn't,
mhm,
and there were actually plenty of conservatives that I knew who actually didn't support it. Like they left the Republican Party because of that. And to me that's what I expected, honestly. I just expected more of that because I just didn't, and I agree with you on that. And the thing about values that I find interesting is that for a lot of people, they don't actually take time to reflect on what their values are until they have a crisis, right? So they
Oh,
grow up with whatever their parents or their
mm,
church or was like socially acceptable, and then
yes,
they have some kind of crisis in their life.
yes.
Or they have, I think it can come about from a positive pressure as well, but I feel like it's frequently they get an illness, or they come out to
Mhm,
themselves, they
mhm,
realize they're gay, um or they realize there's something in their community that isn't fitting, and then they have to kind of really examine it, and that's when they actually know their values. And
yes.
before that, they just kind of are going along with what's comfortable.
Mhm,
And so I think that's the other part of it, is that I feel like when you talk about that, like, you are someone who really got to know your values. And I too went through things to really understand what my values
mhm,
are. And so
mhm,
for me, it's a little bit less automatic.
mhm.
And for the folks that haven't, they're just going, and then they get to a place I think they don't really mean to have gotten to. And I don't know what's to be
Mm.
done about that. But
That's a good one. Hey, Ron is here. Ron, I'm going to talk about you today because you and I talk so often about stuff. So hello to you, sir, and thank you for joining us. I sit down. So whenever I do any of my normal YouTube videos, I start with number one. So I look at myself first. I have a lot of mirrors in my house, so FYI. So I look in the mirror and I say, Gwendolyn, it's time to come clean with who you really are. Like let's write it down, let's figure it out. And so I was thinking about behaviors, and I'm going to use the two campaigns. There was a lady on Threads who wore her Harris Walls shirt to Tractor Supply. And I forgot, where was she, in Kentucky or something? I can't remember. And she was a little nervous about wearing her Harris Walls shirt out in public. And if you go through any social media outlet, you will see a lot of people who are slightly fearful to put a Harris Walls yard sign up, wear a shirt, wear a hat. There's always like a little bit of apprehension. But ask yourself why that is. Because we have seen on video people for Trump Vance who are stealing signs, burning signs, threatening people. Like that's what that is. But if that's what your people are doing, like you talk about free speech as you mentioned, but then
Mhm.
you go so far as to like take my yard sign and burn it, or approach me with like derogatory language. What happened to like the free speech part, partner? Like where
Mhm.
did that go? But why would people feel nervous? I'm not gonna say nervous, concerned,
Mhm.
literally concerned for their safety for wearing the opposition if it was truly the same on both sides. Because I don't see anybody. I mean, I got a neighbor down the street. I say hello to them every day when they pass by. But he will bring he will bring his truck and he'll have his Trump flag flying for the weekend. I'm like, all right, go do your parade. But no one's ever stolen his flag.
Yeah.
No one ever takes his yard signs. No one ever, I mean, he's the only one in the neighborhood with a yard sign, so whatever. But no one ever says, oh, I should go steal his flag and burn it.
Right.
That's not there. That part is not there. So for me, I find it agitating when people take that non-existent middle road. Like it's not the same on both sides. Like that part it needs to cease and desist. Like it's not the same. Like we can't even pretend that the behavior is the same, where someone is asking you to bring me your migrants, your immigrants, and all the people, and another person's like, let's round up all of these people and
Yeah.
send them out, send them back to their country. Mind you, was it not like Indigenous Peoples Day?
Yeah,
Um,
yesterday. Sorry, yeah.
and I thought to myself, okay, so your people got here on some boat at some time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
My people, yeah.
You got the audacity to tell somebody to pick up their stuff and go back home. I'm gonna
Yeah.
help you pack too, partner, because we all going home, wherever that
Mhm.
is.
Yeah. There's a quote that I love. It says, "My definition of a free society is a society where it is safe to be unpopular."
Oh, can we ever get there?
And right? And that's the thing that I find interesting and concerning, like it affects me emotionally as well, is that I genuinely believe, and there's these studies that I looked up before the show, because I was like, I genuinely believe most of us actually want to find common ground, want to work together. And I've referred to them before, the moreincommon.com. They have two. One of them is they found, and they did this one, I want to say in November of 2023, so it wasn't that long ago. A majority of Americans, 72%, agree that we have a responsibility to connect with people who are different from us. 72% of Americans. Many Americans express interest in engaging in activities across lines of difference through levels of interest varying somewhat by outgroup and type of connection. Like 72%. And that was less than a year ago, right? And their studies are very well vetted and all of that. So this idea that we have been fed by in my opinion, the mainstream propaganda media machine is a huge part of the problem that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And this idea that, what you're talking about with the vitriol against immigrants, which is so disgusting, because like you said, we didn't start here. Like, at least your people they didn't emigrate here. They got dragged along. Like, my people are the most culpable, right?
Yeah.
And like, so where am I from, right? Like, that's the question we should be asking. but like, that's the problem, is that like we listen to these because we're inundated with it, right?
Yes.
These messages. And the reality is 72% of the country is like you and me.
Right.
We're happy to connect to people who are different. We're curious about one another. I do love Tim Walz, we want to be good neighbors and mind our own damn business. Like, what a radical concept that speaks to the majority of the population.
Yes.
But for some reason, instead, we get this presentation, this propaganda that tells us that actually most of the people are scary and cruel, and they are riled up. Like, I understand the feelings of unsafety, because you just don't know. It's that whole thing. If there's a bowl of M&Ms and 10% of them have cyanide in them, are you going to take a big handful and eat it? No. And that's the problem, is that the even 5 or 10%, the 28% of people that don't believe in connecting, and maybe the 10% that are violent about it, you have no idea if that's who you're going to run into. They exist, and they have guns, and they're killing people. So even if they are a minority, they're terrifying.
I want to pick up on that. I want to get this comment. Chrissy says, that part, I feel a little nervous outside of my neighborhood wearing Harris Wall's paraphernalia. She also says that the behavior is not the same on both sides. The other side is far more aggressive and unhinged at times. Let me say this. So they had mentioned that there were people, this militia, who felt it was in their right to go after FEMA with their guns. One guy was recently arrested. I should have brought the screenshot. Recently arrested, and he was, and I'm going to go back to, there was an article that came out some years ago, like around 2020, about the angry white man. And he looked to be like, his mugshot looked like he was an angry white man, right? It's that's our reality. Now, I know it's a small percentage, but again, small dogs do a lot of yapping and they get a lot of attention. But when you put together misinformation and then people who feel as if that their country is being taken from them, I keep forgetting what yesterday was. No, I haven't forgotten. I haven't forgotten about it. It was just yesterday. When they are losing the power they've always had, or better yet, the illusion, the lie that they've always been told is slowly slipping away, and like the underwear is starting to show, then you start acting out.
Yeah.
I mean, I think back when another militia decided that they were going to kidnap the governor. Was that in Michigan? They were going to kidnap the governor. I'm like, what? And these are the same people who showed up, in my opinion, for a test run on January 6th. make no mistake about it, that let's just say that things do go a certain way. That does not mean that the foolishness we have seen thus far is going to go away. It is not.
Well, to your point in the episode we did on Project 2025, they started that stuff in 1980s, in the 1980s. Like
1980s.
the the people that want to take our country into some sort of fascist regime and the want to take and hold back women and people of color and Black people and Indigenous people and LGBTQ people, those people are really well organized and they're friggin' committed.
Uh,
And it's just, I mean, and I'm not saying I just feel like sometimes the progressive community will like not acknowledge the things that we're facing because they were, oh, he's dumb or whatever. It's like, okay. And he's incredibly successful at manipulating the masses.
yes.
And I haven't seen that change.
No.
I genuinely only think that Biden won in 2020 because Trump got COVID. I don't think it was, I mean, he couldn't campaign for 3 weeks. That was really like and it's not we have to see what's in front of us so we can accurately face it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sitting here and saying, oh, no one's going to believe that. Why? What's your evidence? Because so far from what I'm seeing, people are believing it.
Yes.
They're getting riled up and they're running with it. And I don't know what the answer. I love that the Walls-Harris commitment to joy and decency, and like I said, good neighbors and mind your business. Yeah. I feel like that's a message that kind of takes us into a new place, and that's great. But these folks, the 1980s, Heritage Foundation, Project 2025 folks, it doesn't matter who wins or loses this election. They're going to keep trying. And we have to come up with a better way to build our country forward than voting for a president and then forgetting about it.
Yes, I two things. One, as you and I talked about, the mandate for leadership, 1980, right? Mm-hmm. They gave it to Ronald Reagan and they update the year as the elections go along. So, hello, long game. But I talked to Ron Foster about a few months ago, and I said, I just have this strange feeling that the people who are in the Heritage Foundation and some of these other conservative think tanks probably had family members who at some point or another own slaves and are still upset about the ale. Mm-hmm. Like they want to go back to a life of plantations. Women are seen, not heard, and I am out in the goddamn cotton fields picking it. Mm-hmm. They are looking for that life. Trust and belief. Look, I cannot help but put that out there. That's real. I would love to say it's not real, but think about it. And I'm going to use the NFL. Colin Kaepernick, God bless him, took a knee, blackballed, right?
Yeah.
Kicked out. Now that Harrison Butker kid, whoever he is for like the Chiefs, the kicker, he is out there openly campaigning for the Trump Vance ideas. Talk about how women should just step aside and take care of their family. I haven't seen not one person say, you all just play football and not speak about politics. Not a one.
No, not I haven't.
Now, it could be this, Aicila. It could be a little bit of this, but I don't, maybe I'm wrong about it. Maybe I'm wrong.
Personally, I don't think you're wrong. And, but yeah, no, it's
yeah, let me do this. Let me do this real quick. I believe that there will be some funny stuff afterwards. As we have been saying, the real work starts November 6th. And Aicila, you have said more than enough times that it's not about your president, it's about what you do on the local level. And since my mother is here, I just want to shout her out really quick. Because I made a video the other day about, how you can call me Gladys, because I stay in my window. I want to know what's going on outside my house. I'm like, who is that and what are they doing? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And let me just make sure. You have to be active in your neighborhood. And my
Mm-hmm.
parents were very active in our neighborhood, right? Very active. I remember my mother, there was broken glass in the street, and she got out and swept up the broken glass in the street because that's her street, right? We don't
Mm-hmm.
need broken glass out here. People are like, well, why are they doing this and why are they doing that? You have to be part of this project. Democracy is only here because the citizens are there to keep it going. It doesn't operate by itself. You can't sit on the
Mm-hmm.
sidelines and then complain about
No.
what's not happening. Now, I
Yeah.
am hopeful that this wave, because I believe a lot of us are just sick and tired of what was. This level of hate, I didn't think we would be here, Aicila. I'm almost
Yeah.
50. I did not think I would be here.
Yeah.
I think we'd be further along and we're moving backwards.
Yep.
I believe we are ready for a new page. We are ready to get back to civility and working things out by having conversations, having discussions, not doing what is like the dirtiest, most ugliest thing that America has done.
Yeah. So I want to speak to what you just said about being active in your community, because I feel like that is so key, regardless of everything else. I don't know if you want to comment on Chrissy first, or
I'm just letting it go.
okay, cool. But so I was stuck. I was visiting my family, and I was stuck in Augusta when Hurricane Helene hit. And it was in Augusta, in recorded history, has never had a hurricane hit like that. We had no power, we had no cell service. You couldn't get gas because they couldn't pump it. And so I was in line at the hardware store, the Ace Hardware, for propane when my son-in-law was getting gas. So he was gone for like 4 hours, and I was there 2 hours before the store was supposed to open. And I'm like third in line, fourth in line, and with my hopeful propane tank. And as time goes on, more and more people are getting in line. And then there's a couple guys who just went up to the front of the store. We're just waiting there. And I was like, I wonder if they know how lines work. Just whatever. And then more people are coming, and they kept getting in line. And so as the door opened, those guys went and got in the back of the line. And nobody had to say anything to them. No one had to, because the majority of the people just followed the respectful process and got in the friggin' line.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
to me, it's the other interesting thing to me is that Augusta was not prepared for this. There was 69,000 of 70,000 people in the county that I was in without power, and half of them didn't have water. It was bad. People were taking care of each other. The street that we were on was cleared because 2 or 3 of the guys in the community got out with chainsaws in the morning and cleared it up. The city didn't come fix it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you're talking about, I really saw that. The reason we didn't have any propane was we invited a bunch of people over. They brought food because we had propane, and we all cooked together. And that to me is really where it's at. And yes, we need to pay attention to the federal, because they can get in our way. We need to pay attention to our representatives because they can make it harder for us to help each other. However, that right there, what you're talking about, what your mom taught you, super shout out to your mom, is ultimately, I think, the place that we have the most power, influence, and opportunity to make a difference. And I'm not pretending that when these psychopaths get into office, that it's not going to harm people. It absolutely will. I am not naive about that in any way. I'm just really clear that that we can create some pockets of mutual aid and support if we're involved in our neighborhoods. If we think that cleaning up the glass in our street is part of our job, if we don't freak out and we just get in the line, it does create some social pressure for people that maybe don't understand how lines work.
It's like, I'm sorry, where are you going? Because I know we've all done it. You'll be at the restaurant or you'll be at the store and someone comes up and you're thinking to yourself, I know she's not going to go out before me. I know she's not. I know she's not going to do it, because if she do it, I'm about to pop off. I know maybe it's just me, because I'm like, I'm going to let her stand there. But if she tries to get in front of me, it's going to be a show today.
It's going to be a show. Exactly.
I'm not going to lie. I haven't had that thought. Chris says, as Finny Lou Hamer said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Something's got to give. I know we are, man. I cannot see us. I cannot see us going back. Now I know again, these little yapping dogs are talking really loud, and
Yeah,
so
they
what
are.
you see again, our mainstream media, they like to put it out there that this is happening and this is happening and that's happening. It's like, okay, stop. So legal people voting. Now, this is just me. I don't know. But I'm gonna take a stab at it. I would think if you were not here legally, the last thing you want to do is bring attention to yourself. The last thing that you want to do,
That sounds a lot like common sense.
right?
I don't know. I'm not sure we're okay with that in our country.
I mean, like, like you have to ask yourself, and I know it's mindset. I'm gonna say it again. I know it's mindset because it's so easy to look at somebody who's not like you and say, well, they probably do this and they probably do that, and they probably, it's like, really? You believe that the person who crossed the border, going through like chain fences and stuff, all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm finna get up here and have my voice heard because I need no, like, are you like, seriously? You really think that? Like, you really think that? Or the fact that when there is money that's given out, that people are unaware that there are so many different budgets and projects and programs that you just can't go taking money from one place. It's like all of these things can be true. It's like there's this simple. I can't even truly articulate how, because if I say what I'm thinking, it's going to sound awful. Okay, I'm going to use simple. It's just simple. It's I would like to believe that most Americans have some idea of how the government works, but clearly this election season has taught me, Gwendolyn, you are wrong. You are extremely wrong. And I know, I'm going to say this, that when people have to become citizens, they take that test. And there are people who can give you the frontwards and backwards of the Constitution who were not born here.
Oh yeah,
no,
they know way more than we do.
Your average American citizen, like there are people who still don't know that Alaska is part of the U.S. And I'm not joking about that. Or the fact that Puerto Rico is part of this. It's like, how do y'all not know this? But yet and still want to talk about all these other people and claim to be so. I'm here for the. You don't even know the basics of this country.
Yeah.
Alaska to you is a foreign, like Alaska. Now I know they're way up there. I get it. I get it. Out of sight, out of mind. I understand, but seriously, really?
Yeah. Well, it's because it's cold. People know Hawaii is. But well, and that's the thing about the election stuff that I find. One, I want to say that they did a bunch of like, I think it was 2020 stuff around like issues with elections, and the only evidence of fraud they found was a Republican vote. I think it was in Texas. So it was like I know it's not always the case, but often it feels like when people are freaking about things that haven't happened, they maybe are telling on themselves.
Projection, yes.
And right, and that's the other thing I think we see a lot of is people, the people who aren't legal to vote are going to do it and it's going to be bad. It's just like, but that isn't happening. So could we actually deal with the things that are happening? And then if that happens, and I'm not talking about basic prevention, like we had poll identify, there's all sorts of stuff, and they've been pulling people off the polls, which PSA to you, if you think you're registered to vote, double check that you're not, that you are, yes, because they have been randomly pulling people off, yes, for names that, anyhow, but look, double check that if you don't have a white sounding name, you're still on the rolls.
It was, hey, I'm here in Texas where Governor Abbott, and I'm going to use the word, he inflated his numbers of taking 6,500 people off the roads who were illegal. Okay, so that was wrong. That was not the number.
Okay.
And he removed people who were born right here in Texas, born and raised. But you
Yep.
know what? That name show look funny, Aicila. That
Yeah.
name, that name said, I don't think, I don't think she's from here. So
Mm.
I'm gonna go ahead and pull it
We gotta
because
fix
she
that.
can't
Yeah.
be a U.S. citizen. That's where we are, and
That's where
that's
we
just
are.
that's some of the things that people are. I'm not gonna say people are doing because it's only okay. Let me read this comment. I'll read the comment. That's what I'm gonna do. Also, you cannot just walk up and vote. The posters check your signature and address. If your signature doesn't match your previous years, you have to show identification. It baffles me how some people wrap their arms around the most darkest parts of the human experience. We all
Mhm.
have it. Now, I said it. I hate liver. Okay, I hate it.
I'm with
It's
you. It's
awful.
gross.
It's gross. My mama loves liver, and my dad did a
Okay.
great liver and onions dish. I hate it. All right.
Mhm.
So, but there are other things that if I don't understand something, I look to figure it out. And I don't, there's a part of me, and I know it sounds kind of odd, but I go like as a writer, I go to these places. Um, I am very happy the good Lord gave me the body he gave me. Like
Mhm.
I would not change my experience for anything, right? I just wouldn't. Do I look at other people who don't look like me and say, what would my life be like, or what would I have done? It's a mental exercise.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not saying that being here puts you in a different place, but at the exact same time, I am saying that being here puts you in a different place.
Mhm.
There are just these other skills and characteristics and things you have to do to get through the day without punching somebody in their throat. That's all I'm saying, Aisla. That's all I'm saying. Because at every moment there is as some, and you and I have talked about it when we talked about being black while driving.
Mhm.
And I was like, it's just being black.
Mhm.
Okay. I don't have to drive. I could be sitting in my yard, sleep in my bed. It don't even matter.
No.
It's just the idea of being is just for some people too much.
Yes.
It's just too much. Just, you know. I
Yeah.
mean, I was out someplace recently and there wasn't a lot of melanin.
Oh no.
There were people, you know how I mean, I'm almost 50. I have seen a lot of looks in my life. I've seen a lot of looks. And so you get this look of,
Mm.
and I'm thinking, don't start done, won't be done. I just want to get back to my part of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
I mean, I can laugh about it, but seriously, we are still there. And
Mhm.
it's like, when are we going to move? When are we going to move past that?
Well, and I
There's
think
more
it's
places out here.
that the challenge is we need to connect, and we are very isolated from one another. We're very isolated from difference. Uh, People don't. I just for one of my clients, they had some guests in town from. Yeah, I agree, Chrissy. It's a total punishment meal. Uh, like I had some, they came in from Germany and they're walking around Denver, and there's no life in your streets. And I just like we don't I love the internet 100%. I grew up in the promise of the futuristic sci-fi stuff, but I really see the ways in which it has become a way to separate us and
Mm,
create fear
mm,
and barriers that don't exist. People are very uncomfortable. They're scared of being uncomfortable. So, like they're scared of saying the wrong thing. And they equate many people equate being socially uncomfortable with actually being threatened, which is not the same thing.
mm,
And so I feel like that to me, I go back to that as a hope. 72% of Americans really think it's important to find. So how do we create that opportunity and encourage that? And how do we create that line experience where we are engaged? Because people do watch whatever you say, it doesn't matter as much as what you do. When people see you going out, making an effort, that has an impact. Like I've really done, like I took stock of that a few years ago and I was like, I'm going to change how I am. Like I have been a kind of afraid of people and I don't like that. Like, I'm not afraid of this, but like in person, I stopped being as engaged. I really made an effort to get to know my neighbors and to really be in my community more. And I constantly am trying to think of ways that are authentic. Like, I don't want to be a weird busybody, although I do agree with the Gladys thing. You got to pay attention. But
Yes.
but really, how do I actually show up in a way that's authentic, that's connective, that isn't me trying to like be some weird savior, but is me being a participant in my community?
Mm.
Because I don't think things are going to change until more of us do that. So we have to know each other just a little bit. It's like you with your friend on the cruise, where like, yeah, you have different politics, but you could have a conversation
Right.
and you could say, this guy isn't here for me. When he talks about family values, my family isn't on his list. And did that change his mind? I have no idea, but it got him to think about something. And more importantly, it got him to understand that there are people on the other side of these insults. Because that's the other thing the internet has done. They've shown it
Mhm.
100%. You will say things on the internet to someone that you would not say in person. Period. End of story. And part of that is the social engage. Like, when I'm standing next to someone, I'm suddenly aware of them. I'm
Yes.
about to say something stupid, right? Or thoughtless, or and there's the possibility that they might say something back, or confront me, and that's actually part of our social conditioning, and we don't have that. So people are spewing all this BS, on the internet from their keyboard warriors or whatever, but they don't ever
Yes.
face any consequences. However, the impact of what they're doing is a big deal.
There are a lot of keyboard warriors who, I don't know, maybe they got to a certain level on the game and decided to go into real life and be like, I'm gonna go out here and say something. All
Hmm.
right. Um, from
Yep.
from what my husband has shown me, that hasn't worked out for a lot of people. They have
Yeah.
found themselves in some really bad situations. Like, real life is not the same
It's
as
not the
you
same.
typing this on a keyboard where no one can touch you. Don't.
Hmm.
I would just not. I would not suggest it. I wouldn't suggest it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
But people have to remember, people are there, right?
right. If I can think
Mhm.
about something, like, I know I said for myself that there are far more things that we have in common than what we have that are different. That really is the case. That's the case. And you have to want, like, so I go to the track, go to the park like every other day. And there are people I see every single day. Now, I am that person who is going to say good morning to every person I pass. Even if they have their headphones on, I'm saying good.
Mhm.
And every now and then, I may get one or two people who just refuse to make eye contact. It's like, I'm not coming for you and your dog, okay? Like, I need to get my 5 miles and get back to the house or whatever. And then there's somebody who's like, refuses to even acknowledge it. It's like, okay, that's fine. But if you run or walk in a park 3 or 4 times a week, you're seeing the same people every morning.
Yep.
Every morning. So at this point, it's like, hey, how are you? Hey, this is the other day. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So it's a choice. These are choices to stay in a silo and pretend as if someone's coming for you. Like,
Mhm.
full stop. Just like, stop. Just
Mhm.
stop. But this is where we are. And I know, I mean, here we are at it. Okay, so typically, guys, like when Aicila and I just have these conversations, we just start rolling. We
Yeah.
may write down topics, we hardly ever get to like everything because it's just,
It's true.
but we we put this idea together because these kind of conversations may start a food fight.
Mhm.
Somebody might get upset and start banging on some tables, start banging on some tables and throwing cranberry sauce or something. Like, these are definitely not your dinner conversations. So, we need to have them, but maybe have them, I don't know, someplace that doesn't involve food, I guess, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, and I think having some like one of the things I appreciate about you is that you're open to the conversation and you also are really clear, like, yeah, that's not for me or I disagree. And it's hard to find some like when people are in their emotions, myself included, the other part of the dinner conversation is that sometimes there's a lot more context, right? Like you're totally used to your sister being a pain in the neck about such and such a thing, and so it can be harder for you to listen. And so sometimes it's helpful to go have these conversations with people that you have less baggage with, so you can actually, maybe learn and grow. And because the truth is, like, I'm kind of a brat with my friends, and we get into it or whatever, but when they finally like come around, and I will absolutely gloat in a way that is 100% like a pain in the neck. Like there's no question about it. But they've been around me long enough. They know that's going to happen, but they might decide to go finish some of it somewhere else, and vice versa. Because after all these years, we have a little bit of too much of knowing each other for
Yes.
it to necessarily always be as helpful. That's why finding people that also are interested in that conversation is helpful too.
I know my mother, a few times that we are all home together and we break out into a conversation. I mean, it could be a bit much.
Yeah.
Somebody has to call uncle's like, you know what, forget it, because it's just not worth it. Oh, thank you, Chrissy. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really do appreciate it. We figured let's just do one live show before we get back into all of our normal banter, which really quick, next week we are back to our normal.
Mhm.
And next week we're talking about rape culture.
A
Just in
nice
case you
light
guys,
topic for dinner.
definitely not for dinner. We
No.
we got into, we talked about incest, rape culture, victim shaming. Yeah, you might want to get a cocktail
Yeah.
if you want to ride with us and have this conversation. But we really do want people to share their thoughts, and just like we can't move forward if we don't ever start talking and start listening.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to put out a table with some nibbles and a little bit of something and say, let's just sit down and talk this out, because we're going nowhere. It's like
Right.
it's not working. And personally, I am over the hate. I'm, like I said,
Yep.
I'm almost 50. I don't need my grandbabies. I don't need my nieces, my nephews to continue to see this. Now, I don't
Yeah.
know how much further. It's like the Titanic plus. So we got a lot of shifting to do, but whatever I can do to give
Yeah.
them a better environment, I am here for it, for myself as well, right?
Mhm.
Because I'm still here, but
Yeah.
it's time for us to do something different.
Agreed. Well, and I want to, before we close, I do want to share. I had one more thing from the More in Common. I posted a link in the YouTube, but one of the things that they talked about in one of their studies, and I think you'll really resonate with this, is that there's a group of Americans that they call the exhausted majority. 67% of the Americans are fed up with the polarization plaguing American government and society. They're flexible in their views, willing to endorse different policies according to the precise situation rather than sticking ideological to a single set of beliefs. And they believe we can find a common ground. And that's 67%, the exhausted majority. And I feel like that's who we're trying to connect with, because these are the people that they're so tired of the polarization, they're opting out of the conversations entirely. And I feel like if we can invite more people in and realize there's most of the people think we should be connecting across difference and actually believe that the polarization is a problem and we have common ground. So I think that it's okay. You got to be safe, obviously, but you can be a little vulnerable. And I think you'll be surprised.
That is a perfect way to end it. And before we go, a couple of things. My mama's giving us all the amens.
Yay.
Chrissy says, what an important topic, because rape culture is very enmeshed in our culture. It is, and we went there. So we want to thank you guys for showing up for us again next Wednesday, 4 o'clock Central. Our next episode comes out. We have so many more topics to discuss. We're going to get back to it. My house is now singing to me. Like, I was like, who is that? Like, there's a lot of stuff going on outside this door that don't make sense.
Maybe it's the cocktails.
It could be the cocktail. I was like, I don't remember telling the machines to start playing music, but it is like blasting right now. So I'm going to get to that. We want to thank you all for tuning in with us. And this is Not Dinner Conversations with Aicila and G. Yeah. Live from New York City. No, it's not. It's not from New York City. All right, see you guys.
Everybody.